Hello, this is Kevin Daly, and today I'm not slightly out to lunch, but rather more than slightly into my record collection, with an hour of songs by one of my favourite singers of the 20s and 30s, Frank Crumit.
Sons of the prophet were brave men and bold, and quite unaccustomed to fear. But the bravest by far in the ranks of the Shah was Abdul Bulbul Amir. Now the heroes were plenty and well known to fame in the troops that were led by the Tsar. And the bravest of these was a man by the name of Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar. One day this bold Russian had shouldered his gun and donned his most truculent sneer. Downtown he did go, where he trod on the toe of Abdul Bulbul Amir. Young man, quoth Abdul, has life grown so dull that you wish to end your career? Vile infidel, no, you have trod on the toe of Abdul Bulbul Amir. Said Ivan, my friend, your remarks in the end will avail you but little, I fear, for you ne'er will survive to repeat them alive, Mr. Abdul Bulbul Amir. So take your last look at sunshine and brook and send your regrets to the Tsar, for by this I imply you are going to die, Count Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar. And this bold Mameluke drew his trusty skiboot with a cry of Allah Akbar, and with murderous intent he ferociously went for Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar. They fought all that night neath the pale yellow moon. The din it was heard from afar, and huge multitudes came, so great was the fame of Abdul and Ivan Skavar. As Abdul's long knife was extracting the life, in fact he was shouting huzzah. He felt himself struck by that wily Kalmuck, Count Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar. The Sultan drove by in his red-breasted fly, expecting the victor to cheer, but he only drew nigh to hear the last sigh of Abdul Bulbul Amir. Tsar Petrovich, too, in his spectacles blue, rode up in his new crested car. He arrived just in time to exchange a last line with Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar. There the tomb rises up where the blue Danube rolls, engraved there in characters clear. Our stranger, when passing, oh, pray for the soul of Abdul Bulbul Amir. A Muscovite maiden her lone vigil keeps neath the light on the pale polar star, and the name that she murmurs so oft as she weeps is Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar.
Abdul Bulbul Amir, possibly Frank Crumit's most successful recording, made on the 8th of April 1927. It's his rewrite of a song by the Irish composer Percy French, and it's still one of the most requested items on Sentimental Journey. And even back in the 20s, it was so popular that follow-up versions were written where Abdul and his perennial adversary Ivan Stravinsky-Skavar refought their battle in increasingly complex fashion. There was even one called the grandson of Abdul. But who was Frank Crumit? Well, to most of us, he's just a name on a record label. There can be few listeners who ever saw him work on stage. He never visited Australia. In fact, he seldom left the east coast of the United States, so there can't be many people here who've got first-hand personal memories of him. So his reputation is based entirely on his steady output of gramophone records. But the records were certainly not produced from thin air. Real musicians sat in the studios to play arrangements written by equally real musical directors. Crumit cracked jokes with them, argued about alterations to the scores, and frequently made mistakes. The disc that was finally issued might be the 6th or 7th attempt to get the song onto wax. Sometimes he gave up and came back another day to try again. Yet it's never obvious when we listen to the records. They're always fresh and spontaneous.
Listen to the tale of a stalwart male who lost his well-known nanny. Donald was his name, and golf was the game that made him gray as his granny. He practiced much, but his style was such that his handicap stayed at 30. Oh, the words he'd use when the ball he'd bruise were nothing else than dirty. In the locker room every night, he'd sing of his awful plight. Oh, the dirty little pill went rolling down the hill and rolled right into a bunker. From there to the green I took 13, and then by gosh I sunk her. I get no fun in the air and sun, but down in the traps I labor. I sweat and weep where the sand is deep till I want to murder my neighbor. Oh, baby, look at that drive. Whee, whee. Now, whoa, 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 you.
Out of bounds.
All right, Caddy, give me another ball. There was one great day that came his way. His score he was sure to diminish. Never had such form, then up came a storm. He was never able to finish. He had a slice that was far from nice. From him it never parted. Once he hit a shot, believe it or not, that came right back where it started. Do you wonder that he groans and sighs and wails and moans? Oh, the dirty little pill went rolling down the hill and rolled right into the water. And the reason it would seem I lifted my bean when I know that I shouldn't oughter. Then I hit a shot that I liked a lot, but it sailed right into the marshes. And I wished right then, like a lot of other men, that I had worn my galoshes.
Hey, Donald, how many shots did you take over in that rock pile?
Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 6, I believe.
Oh, you dirty so-and-so. I counted 12 times I heard your club hit something.
Well, the other 6 were echoes.
Now Donald the Dove joined a country club and found a fellow duffer just as bad as he, so with shouts of glee they started out to suffer. They played 9 holes and the poor little moles were never scared so badly, for the divots flew and the cuss words too, and the birds and the bees left gladly. As the end of the day drew nigh, came a song that was sung with a sigh. Oh, the dirty little pill went rolling down the hill and rolled right into the clubhouse. And I got there with sand in my hair. They changed its name to the Dub House. I've wrecked more ground than Columbus found, and the guy that I am after is the crazy Scot who invented this plot that's robbed all the world of laughter. Now Donald the Dub broke club after club as he told the world goodbye, for he suffered every hour when his game went sour, even as you and I.
Donald the Dub, reflecting one of Frank Crumit's outside obsessions. He was a golf fanatic and worked the game into several of his songs. As I was saying before, his records weren't made in a vacuum. They reflect a man who enjoyed life and delighted in sharing his pleasures. Frank Crumit was born on the 26th of September in 1889 in Jackson, Ohio, where his father was a moderately successful banker who sent his son off to the Culver Military Academy in Indiana, where Frank managed to matriculate as an engineer, despite spending half of his time on the sports field and the other half as a leading light of the Amateur Dramatic Society. Well, after graduating from college in 1910, he half-heartedly worked as an engineer for a couple of years, but gradually found work as a song and dance man on the vaudeville stage. Then, for several years, he toured the seedier vaudeville and burlesque circuits, writing songs in his dressing room and fitting them into shows whenever he had the opportunity. His big break came in 1918, when he was offered the juvenile lead in Bessie Be Good on Broadway. This led to a starring part in a revue, the Greenwich Village Follies of 1920. He not only appeared in the show, he also wrote most of the songs, and met his future wife, Julia Sanderson. She was already a considerable star, and when she and Frank teamed up, he wrote the songs for her new Broadway vehicle, Tangerine, and appeared as a supporting actor in the production. During the run of the show, they were married and thereafter worked as a double act whenever possible. They didn't make many records together, so here's one of the handful. Would you like to take a walk?
I saw you strolling by your solitary. I'm a nosy, very, very.
I'd like to bet a juicy huckleberry. What you're after is a girl
We're both in luck, for introductions are not necessary. Would you like to take a walk?
Do you think it's gonna rain?
How about a sarsaparilla?
Gee, the moon is yellow.
Something good will come from that. Have you heard the latest song?
It's a very pretty strain. Don't you feel a little thrilly?
Gee, it's getting chilly.
Some good will come from that. When you're strolling through the where's it, you need a who's it to lean upon.
But when you have no who's it to hug and what's the gosh darn. Would you like to take a walk?
Do you think it's gonna rain?
Ain't you tired of the talking?
I prefer the walking. Something good will come from that.
But when you have no who's it to hug and what's the gosh darn. Would you like to take a walk?
Do you think it's gonna rain?
Ain't you tired of the talking?
I prefer the walking. Something good will come from that.
Julia Sanderson and Frank Crumit with Would You Like to Take a Walk, recorded in New York on the 11th of February, 1931. Frank's recording career had begun 12 years earlier in 1919, when he was signed by the Columbia Company, and between then and 1923 he made well over 100 sides for them, very few of any lasting musical merit. Part of the trouble was they didn't seem to know what to do with him. They didn't want his own songs, and so he was given a diet of down-market ballads, comic rather than funny songs, a few show tunes, and he spent hours and hours re-recording titles originally put down by venerable artists like Walter Van Brunt. One of the most deadening aspects of these records were the creaking musical accompaniments. At a time when the other companies were bringing in jazz, the Columbia Studio Orchestra stolidly stuck with their Edwardian ragtime band parts. But although most of Frank Crumit's Columbia records are pretty awful, there are a few very notable exceptions. Here's one of them. It's one of the hits from the Greenwich Village Follies of 1920, Albert von Tilser's Oh by Jingo.
In the land of San Domingo lived a girl called Oh by Jingo, From the fields and from the marshes came the old and the young by gushes, They all spoke with a different lingo, but they all loved Oh by Jingo, and every night they sang in the pale moonlight, Oh by gee, by gosh, by gum, by job, Oh by Jingo, won't you hear our love? We will build for you a hut, you will be our favorite nut. We'll have a lot of little oh by golly, then we'll put 'em all in the follies. By Jingo said, by gosh, by gee, by Jiminy, please don't bother me. So they all went away singing oh by gee, by gosh, by gum, by jub, by Jingo, by gee, you're the only girl for me. By by jingo said, now boys don't rave. I've put 4 husbands in their grave. So they all went away singing, oh, by gee, by gosh, by gum, by jump, by jingo, by gee, you're the only girl for me.
Oh, by G, by Jingo, recorded on the 31st of March 1920 and belted out much in the style of Eddie Cantor or Al Jolson. It gives a pretty good idea of how Crumit could interpret a spirited vaudeville number, and the song became one of the earliest hits for its young composer, Walter Donaldson. In December 1923, Frank Crumit switched from Columbia to the booming Victor Company, recording under the guidance of Nat Shilkret, the outfit's musical director, who'd formed a really excellent backing band, the Victor Orchestra, using the talents of the very best of New York symphonic and jazz players. Shilkret had very up-to-date ideas, and he picked very good material for his artists. At first, Crumit was still given 20s pop titles, but from sources much hotter than previously. Oh Baby, made on his second Victor session in December 1923, was a vocal treatment of another Walter Donaldson composition, currently an instrumental hit for Bix Beiderbecke and the Wolverine Orchestra. The lyric is an amused look at young married love, and Frank is accompanied by the sparkling piano of a future band leader, Phil Oman, and his own relaxed ukulele.
Pretty Mary Grady was a faithful little lady. The boys all called her slow, 'cause all she said was no. Little Jackie Horner got her cornered in a corner, and he whispered, marry me. Don't start in disagreeing. Oh baby, don't say no, say maybe. That's just as good as yes to me. Start learning your lesson, stop knowing, keep guessing, and you can leave the rest to me. Each evening when we're home alone, I hope you let me practice my saxophone. So baby, oh baby, don't say no, say maybe, and baby, you'll be mine. Oh baby, don't say no, say maybe, that's just as good as yes to me. Start learning your lesson, stop knowing, keep yesing, and you can leave the rest to me. Until you say, let's look for class, I'll follow you until my socksies are fast. So baby, oh baby, don't say no, say maybe, and baby, you'll be mine.
Frank Crumit and his ukulele with Oh Baby, recorded on the 21st of December 1923. Crumit was an excellent ukulele player, perhaps not up to the standard of Cliff Edwards, but pretty good. In the 20s, everyone played the uke. It was light, portable, and easy to play, and brilliantine young men could simultaneously serenade the flapper of their choice and impress her with their prowess. Frank Crumit used the instrument on several of his records. What Do I Care, High, High, High Up in the Hills, Sitting on Top of the World, all pretty good. But probably the most convincing of his songs in this style was a song full of the lazy sexual symbolism that George Formby was later to make into almost an art form. Here it is, Richard Whiting's Ukulele Lady.
I saw the splendor of the moonlight on Honolulu Bay. There's something tender in the moonlight on Honolulu Bay. And all the beaches are full of peaches who bring their youths along. And in the glimmer of the moonlight they love to sing this song. If you like a ukulele lady like a you. If you like to linger where the shady, ukulele lady linger too. If you kiss the ukulele lady, why you promise ever to be true. And she'll see another ukulele lady fooling around with you. Maybe she'll start ukulele lady like you. She used to sing to me by moonlight on Honolulu Bay. Fond memories cling to me by moonlight, although I'm far away. Someday I'm going where eyes are glowing and lips are made to kiss, to see somebody in the moonlight and hear the song I miss. If you like a ukulele lady like a you. If you like to linger where it's shady, ukulele lady linger too. If you kiss the ukulele lady, why you promise ever to be true. When she sees another ukulele lady fooling around with you, maybe she'll sigh an awful lot, maybe she'll cry and maybe not, maybe she'll find somebody else by and by to sing to it when it's cool and shady, when the tricky wicky wacky woo. If you like a ukulele lady like you like me, like I like you, and we both like the same. I'd like to say this very day, ukulele lady like you.
Ukulele Lady with Frank Crumit on ukulele and Carson Robertson on guitar, made on the 10th of June 1925, one of the Victor Company's very first electrical recordings. The 20s seemed to encourage lunacy on a grand scale. Starting with Prohibition, probably the biggest lunacy of the lot, there followed all sorts of weird and wonderful pastimes and occupations. Pole squatting, marathon dance championships, yo-yos. And the pop songs reflected these obsessions with a series of outlandish and generally tuneless numbers. There was even a spate of songs about vegetables and fruit. Yes, we have no bananas, for instance. Here's Frank Crumit's contribution.
Nowadays we often gaze on women over 50 without the slightest trace of wrinkles on their face. Doctors go and take their dough to make them young and nifty. The doctors I defy to tell me just why. No matter how young a prune may be, it's always full of wrinkles. We may get them on our face, prunes get them every place. Prohibition worries us, but prunes don't sit and brood. For no matter how young a prune may be, it's always getting stewed. In the kingdom of the fruit, the prune is snubbed by others, and they are not allowed to mingle with the crowd, though they're never on display with all their highbrow brothers. They never seem to mind. To this fact they're resigned, that no matter how young a prune may be, it's always full of wrinkles. Beauty treatments always fail. They've tried all to no avail. Other fruits are envious, because they know real well that no matter how young a prune may be, hot water makes them swell. Baby prunes look like their dad, but not wrinkled quite as bad. Every day in every way, the world is getting better. We've even learned to fly as days go passing by. But what about that poor old prune? His life is only wetter. No wonder he can't grin in the awful stew he's in. No matter how young a prune may be, it's always full of wrinkles. We may get them on our face, prunes get them every place. Nothing ever worries them, their life's an open book. But no matter how young a prune may be, it has a worried look. kind, they say, when sickly people moan. But no matter how young a prune may be, it has a heart of stone.
The Song of the Prune, recorded in April 1928, and it's still a funny song. Another witty song on one of Crumit's best-known records is Granny's Old Armchair, his reconstructed version of an English music hall song, Grandmother's Chair, written by John Reed in 1877. The story of the grandson who inherits a chair only to find that it conceals a fortune became a popular fictional device and was later used as the storyline for 2 films, Keep Your Seats Please with George Formby in 1936 and Jack Benny's 1941 The Fifth Chair. This is where they got it from.
My grandmother, she, at the age of 83, one day took sick and died. And after she was dead, the will, of course, was read by a lawyer as we all stood side by side. To my brother it was found she had left 100 pounds, the same unto my sister, I declare. But when it came to me, the lawyer said, I see she had left you her old armchair. How they tittered, how they chaffed, how my brothers and my sisters laughed when they heard the lawyer declare Granny had left you her old armchair. I thought it hardly fair, and still I did not care, and in the evening took the chair away. The neighbors, they chaffed, and my brother at me laughed, and said it will be useful someday. When you settle down in life, find the girl to be your wife, you'll find it very handy, I declare. On a cold and frosty night, when the fire burns bright, you can sit in your old armchair. How they tittered, how they chaffed, how my brothers and my sisters laughed when they heard the lawyer declare Granny has left you her old armchair. What my brother said was true, for in a year or 2 I had settled down in married life. I first a girl did court, and then a ring I bought, took her to the church to be my wife. Oh, the old girl and me were happy as could be, for when my work was over, I declare, I never abroad would roam, but each night stayed at home and was seated in my old armchair. How they tittered and how they chaffed, how my brothers and my sisters laughed when they heard the lawyer declare Granny had left you her old armchair. And here's how Granny fooled it. One night the chair fell down. When I picked it up I found the seat had fallen out upon the floor. And there to my surprise I saw before my eyes a lot of notes, 2,000 pounds or more. When my brother heard of this, the fellow, I confess, went nearly wild with rage and tore his hair. I only laughed at him and said unto him, Jim, don't you wish you had the old armchair? How they tittered, how they chaffed, how my brothers and my sisters laughed when they heard the lawyer declare Granny has left you her old armchair.
Granny's Old Armchair, and you'll notice that it's much more folky than most of the tracks we've heard so far, and that was the style that Frank Crumit settled down to from the mid-20s onwards. It was in 1925 that his love of traditional tunes and songs he'd learned from his parents in Jackson first became apparent to a wider audience when he recorded Billy Boy in an American version of the Old English folk song. Many other songs followed, Little Brown Jug, Get Away Old Man, Pretty Little Dear, but I think one of the best is The Bride's Lament. It's a sad story about a girl whose sailor husband has been lost at sea. Now, for some reason, it's been set to a cheerful Irish dance. It makes for an incongruous combination, but it's classic Crumit.
Long years ago when I was young, the flowers they bloomed and the birds they sung. A sailor lad and his lovely bride were weeping by the ocean side. Tra-la-la-la, la-la-la-la, tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. A sailor lad and his lovely bride were weeping by the ocean side. Scarce 6 months since we were wed, and oh how fast the time has fled. But we must part at the dawning of the day when the good ship bears my love away. Tra-la-la-la, la-la-la-la, tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. But we must part at the dawning of the day when the good ship bears my love away. Long years have passed and he comes no more to greet his bride on the lonely shore. The ship went down in the howling of the storm, and the waves engulfed his lifeless form. Tra-la-la-la, la-la-la-la, tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. The ship went down in the howling of the storm, and the waves engulfed his lifeless form. Beneath the sea, the mermaids there shed tears for me. The mermaids are at the bottom of the sea, shedding their sad tears for me. Tra-la-la-la, la-la-la-la, tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. The mermaids are at the bottom of the sea, shedding their sad tears for me. I would that I were sleeping too beneath the waves in the ocean blue. My soul to my God and my body to the sea, and the dark blue waves are rolling over me. Tra-la-la-la, la-la-la-la, tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. My soul to my God and my body to the sea, and the dark blue waves are rolling over me.
Frank Crumit with The Bride's Lament, recorded in July 1928. Wonder how they got that surf effect. Very curious. The next song deserves a bit of an explanation, as it's a setting of a poem by Rudyard Kipling. Kipling's verse has always been popular with singers. Peter Dawson arranged several of his poems under the name of J.P. McCowell, including Boots Boots and The Road to Mandalay. This one is I Learned About Women from Her, and it's Frank Crumit's setting of 5 of the 8 verses of Kipling's poem, The Ladies. Now, I can see why he's cut the 5th verse. It contains a litany of almost unintelligible Hindustani names and has racial references which even in 1928 would have been offensive. But it's less easy to understand why he's left out the last verse, because it contains one of Kipling's most quoted lines, "For the Colonel's lady and Judy O'Grady are sisters under their skins." But despite the cuts, it's a song with great charm, and Crumit's plaintive melody matches the words with great skill.
I've taken me fun where I found it. I've roved and I've ranged in me time. I've had me pickin' at sweethearts, and 3 of the lot was prime. One was a cost widow, one was a woman at Rome, one was the wife of a Jimmy Darcise, and one was a girl at home. I was a young and a doogly, shy as a girl to begin. Aggie de Castro, she made me, and Aggie was clever as sin. Older than me, but me firsten, more like a mother she were. Showed me the way to promotion and pay, and I learned about women from her. Then I was ordered to Burma, acting in charge of bazaar. and I got me a tidy live Eden through buying supplies from her pa. Funny and yeller and faithful, doll in a teacup she was. But we lived on the square like a true merry pair, and I learned about women from her. Then I come home on a trooper, along with a kid of 16, girl from a convent at Meerut, the straightest I ever had seen. Love at first sight was her trouble. She didn't know what it were, and I wouldn't do such, 'cause I liked her too much. But I learned about women from her. I've taken me fun where I found it, and now I must pay for me fun. For the more you have known of the others, the less you will settle to one. And the end of it sitting and thinking and dreaming hellfires to see. So be warned by my lot, which I know you will not, and learn about women from me.
There you are, a bit of vintage sexism from Rudyard Kipling with a bit of help from Frank Crumit, complete that time with Cockney accent. But his affection for traditional music didn't stop him recording new popular songs. In 1926, Larry Hart and Richard Rodgers wrote their first really big Broadway musical, The Girlfriend. The title song, describing a lady who was gentle and mentally nearly complete, became a classic, as did Mountain Greenery, first written the previous year for the Garrick Gaieties when Rodgers and Hart were still penniless. Frank Crumit heard the song in rehearsal and was the first artist to record it. There are no tricks, no flamboyance, just a sensitive and believable performance.
On the 1st of May, it is moving day. Spring is here, so blow your job, throw your job away. Now's the time to trust to your wanderlust. In the city's dust you wait, must you wait, just you wait. In our mountain greenery where God paints the scenery, just two crazy people together. While you love your lover, let blue skies be your cover. Let when it rains we laugh at the weather. And if you're good, I'll search for wood so you can cook while I stand looking. Beans could get no keener reception in the beanery. Bless our mountain greenery home. In our mountain greenery where God paints the scenery, just two crazy people together. How we love sequestering where no pests are pestering, no dear mama holds us in terror. Mosquitoes are here, won't bite you, dear. I'll let them sting me on the finger. We could find no cleaner retreat from life's machinery than our mountain greenery home. When the world was young, oh, Father Adam with sin would grapple, so we're entitled to just one apple. I mean to make applesauce. Underneath the bough, we'll learn a lesson from Mr. Omar. Beneath the eyes of no pa and no ma, old Lady Nature is boss. And if you're good, I'll search for wood so you can cook while I stand a-looking. He's gonna get no keener reception in the beanery, bless our mountain greenery home.
Mountain Greenery, Frank Crumit and his ukulele with Jack Shilcross on piano, 29th of July, 1926. By 1928, Frank Crumit and Julia Sanderson had branched out into radio. Although the wireless had been there for less than 6 years, radio audiences were already measured in millions, and the networks bid wildly against each other for established stars. The Crumit's first program was for the Blackstone Cigar Company, where they featured topical sketches blended with music. Here's a song from the radio days. It's based on a book by Charles Sale called The Specialist. Now, if you don't know this story of Lem Putt, the champion dunny builder of Sangamon County, do try and find it. It's a very, very funny little book. It's still in print after more than 40-odd editions. The song's as funny as the book. It should be. Both written by the same man.
My name is Lemuel Putt. I'm a slicker and I'm nothing else but. Maybe you've all heard tell about the fella makes the building so well. I'm a carpenter by trade. I make anything that's ever been made. But now I build one thing, and as a builder I am suddenly king. I'm a specialist, and a gosh darn good one too. I'm a specialist, and I'll tell you what I do. Now I build people necessary things, not airy planes that flies around in rings, but we need 'em that does that western wings. I'm a specialist. Now one day Elmer Ridgway come to me and he says, now looky here, I want you to build me a building that will last from year to year. So out to Elmer's place I goes to look things over every foot. Company's there, so I just yelled, hey Elmer, where do you want her put? Well, Elmer says my problem is to put her where she'll hand be. Now I've been thinking that I would build her right underneath my apple tree. But I says, Elmer, listen to me. Now don't you be a silly goof. Nothing's quite so bad as hearing apples dropping on your roof. Just have your path go past the woodpile to the house right in a straight line. Now if you do just as I tell you, everything will turn out fine. For every trip they'll gather wood, which is a gosh almighty boon. For on a good day, why, you will have your darned old wood box filled by noon. The upkeep's practically nothing. The cost is cut right to the bone. You will never have to worry as long as Sears Roebuck keeps a-going. Someone asked me, Lem, what is the average life of this here book? Now, there's a problem that I have studied. Time and trouble I have took. New book's out in January, and say you get it on New Year's Day. Well, you should reach the harness section somewhere round the 1st of May. And how do you want your door to open? Swinging in or swinging out? I'd say have her swinging in and save your mind a lot of doubt. Just say you're meditating peaceful, the air and sunlight beating in. Suppose you hear someone coming down the pathway fast as sin. If your door swings in, why, all you gotta do is to kick her shut. But if she swings out, you're caught there, sure as my name's Lemuel Putt. I'm a specialist, and a gosh darn good one, too. I'm a specialist, and I'll tell you what I do. Now, ever since Eve ate that northern spy, there's time folks likes to shun the public eye, so a much-needed blessing I supply. I'm a specialist.
Specialist, Chick Sale's own musical version of his classic of lavatory literature, recorded in November 1931. From the 30s onwards, radio became the mainstay of Frank Crumit's career, and from their home in Springfield, Massachusetts, Frank and Julia traveled twice a day to the CBS studio in New York. In the mornings, they hosted a variety show, and in the evenings, they presented their quiz show, The Battle of the Sexes, which had the highest weekly listening figures for CBS. Now, here's a song that Frank featured a lot on radio. a carefully observed and carefully acted put-down of a professional boozer.
One evening in October, when I was about 1/3 sober, and I was taking home a load with manly pride, my poor feet began to stutter, so I lay down in the gutter, and a pig came up and lay down by my side. Then we sang a song of fair weather, when good fellows get together, till a lady passing by was heard to say, she says, you can tell a man who boozes by the company he chooses. And the pig got up and slowly walked away. As the pig got up and slowly walked away, slowly walked away, slowly walked away. As the pig got up and he turned and winked at me as he slowly walked away. I also well remember one evening in November when I was creeping home at break of day. For in my exhilaration, I engaged in conversation with a cab horse right on the corner of Broadway. I was filled up to the eyeballs with a flock of gin and highballs, so I whispered to the cab horse old and gray. I says, it's these all-night homeward marches that gave us both our fallen arches. And the old horse laughed and slowly walked away. Yes, the old horse laughed and slowly walked away. He slowly walked away. He slowly walked away. And the old horse laughed, and he turned and winked at me as he slowly walked away. As he slowly walked away.
Frank Crumit in October 1934. Although now tied up full-time in radio, he still made occasional visits to the recording studios and used material from radio or current show tunes. One of the theatrical miracles of 1937 was the Broadway success of a show called Pins and Needles. This was a topical revue, and all the cast were amateurs. The show had been designed for a one-week run for the amusement of members of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and the music and lyrics were written by a young beginner, Harold Rome. And he was as surprised as the other members of the cast when the revue transferred to Broadway, and subsequently had one of the longest runs of any musical in New York. Here's the hit song from the show, Sunday in the Park, recorded by Frank Crumit on St. Patrick's Day, 17th of March, 1938.
Sunday in the park, all week long we keep on looking forward to the happy things we do. It's such a lark on Sunday in the park, sitting in the sun with the trees and grass and flowers everywhere, and lots of room to spare. We have such fun on Sunday in the park. Rich folks go away to the country, you know, when the days get hard. But we all decided that we wouldn't go. We prefer this quiet spot on Sunday in the park. It's our summer home where we can play and sport, our fashionable resort until it's dark. on Sunday in the park. Sunday in the park. All week long we keep on looking forward to the happy things we do. Oh, it's such a lark on Sunday in the park. Sitting in the sun with the trees and grass and flowers everywhere and lots of room to spare, we have such fun on Sunday in the park. Rich folks go away to the country, you know, when the days get hard. But we all decided that we wouldn't go. We prefer this quiet spot on Sunday in the park. It's our summer home where we can play and sport, our fashionable resort until it's dark on Sunday in the park.
Harold Rome's Sunday in the Park, recorded in March 1938. That track was from almost the last session that Frank Crumit recorded. He did make a few more titles with Julia Sanderson, the last in April 1941, when they recreated songs from their shows Tangerine and The Girl from Utah for the American Decca Company. But these were to be the last records that either artist made. At the height of his radio popularity, Frank Crumit died suddenly in September 1943. He was only 53. Julia retired soon afterwards, but survived him until 1979. Now, I feel that Frank Crumit was a genuine original. He was the first popular singer to take folk music seriously and treat it with affectionate respect, and in the process he laid the foundations for Burl Ives, Pete Seeger, even Bob Dylan to build on. But more than that, he was an entertainer, and more than 40 years after his death we can still be delighted by his wry good humour. So from me, Kevin Daly, goodbye for now, and I'll close with one of my own favourite records by Frank Crumit. Not as nostalgia, but as a living reminder of one of the most delightful performers of 20th century popular music.
Say, darkies, have you seen the master with the mustache on his face? Go along the road sometime this morning like he's going to leave the place. He's seen a smoke way up the river where the Lincoln gunboats lay. He took his hat and left very sudden, and I expect he's run away. The master run, ha ha, the darkies say ho ho. It must be now the kingdom coming and the year of Jubilo. He's 6 foot one way, 2 foot t'other, and he weighs 300 pounds. His coat's so big he couldn't pay the tailor, and it won't go halfway round. He drills so much they call him captain, and he gets so dreadful tanned. I expect he'd try and fool them Yankees, for to think he's contraband. Go the master run, ha ha, the darkies say ho ho. Well, it must be now the kingdom's coming and the year of Jubilo. Oh, the darkies feel so lonesome living in the log house on the lawn. They move their things to Massa's parlor for to keep it while he's gone. There's wine and cider in the kitchen, and the darkies, they'll have some. I suppose they'll all be confiscated when the Lincoln soldiers come. Oh, the master run, ha, 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 and the darkies say, ho, ho, ho. Well, it must be now the kingdom's coming and the year of jubilo. The overseer, he makes trouble and he drives us round the cell. We lock him up in the smokehouse cell with the key thrown in the well. The whip is lost, the handcuff broken, but the master'll have his pay. He's old enough, big enough, ought to know better than to went and run away. But the master run, ha, ha, and the darkies say, ho, ho. It must be now the kingdom coming and the year of jubilo.